Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. So this is going to be part 3 of our OH-13 or 13 Sioux helicopter by Italeri in 1/48 scale. And let's see, in our last video, we worked on this. So this is the tub where the cockpit is and has that nice big clear canopy windscreen on it. And yeah, we had to do some work on that. So if you hadn't seen that video, go back and look at that. It's all we do in it. So the next thing up, we're going to build the rest of the helicopter as much as we can, except for the parts that we got to paint separately. And also, we're going to have to check and see if our helicopter is a tail sitter. And by that we mean that if it's supposed to sit flat on its skids and there's too much weight on the rest of the fuselage or airframe, then it's going to set down on its rotor, and we don't want it to do that. Now, you can have this same problem in aircraft that have the tricycle type. That's my tricycle. Tricycle type landing gears. If there's not enough weight up forward, it'll set down on its tail, and we don't want to do that. So let's jump down to the bench and get to building, and then we can check out that weight distribution. So as always, we're going to check out our instructions here, and this is the cockpit section here, and this is step 3. So we have, of course, our collectives and our joysticks and our pedals and also our console there with all of our gauges and stuff on. First thing I want to do is check the fit of our floor here. I want to make sure that that's going to set okay. So that looks good. And next up, I want to check the fit of our center console here. That this holds all of our instrument gauges, and make sure that that's going to be an okay fit. Now for our seat, we have these recesses on the bottom here, which would be a good place for us to add additional weight if we need it. Just in case the aircraft wants to be a tail sitter. So we're not going to cement that into place, and it's going to be painted separately anyway, so we'll just set that aside. So we can go ahead and put our instrument cluster together here. So that's that pedestal that holds all of our gauges and everything, and we can just go ahead and cement that into place. And I just would kind of want to make sure that it's, center. These parts do have a little bit of movement on them. They're back and forth, so I just want to get it as centered as possible. Next, we can put our collectives in. They are painted a different color. However, they're, if we go ahead and cement them into place, we don't have to worry about, trying to hold them with tweezers or anything like that. And it's fairly simple to do some detail painting here. So I'm just going to make sure that those are lined up. And then we can go ahead and add a little bit more of our Tamiya extra thin there and put in our control sticks. And we do want to make sure that they are aligned with one another and press down into place there. Want to make sure that they're nice and solid, and there's very little space underneath them there. They got a little boot on the bottom of them there. So let's go ahead and check what our fit's going to be here. So that's what's going to happen with the seat. That's where it's going to go. I just want to make sure that we can get that in without too much trouble. And we'll go ahead and put our tail rotor pedals into place here. At least I believe that. Yeah. They control our tail rotors, so we'll cement them in. And I do want to double check and make sure that we have plenty of room there. So that's fine. So that's our cockpit. So let's go ahead and set that into place. And I like to test fit. So with that taken care of and everything sets nicely, we can go on to step 4 here. And we're going to build up the rest of the airframe there. And that's quite a few parts that we need to put on there. So we have this small little box here that we need to cement into place there, right on that one strut. It's got a couple of alignment holes that it's supposed to line up with the 2 pins that's on the inside there. Yeah, it's a little bit annoying. Small light parts tend to give me trouble sometimes. A little bit of extra thin there, and that's kind of how it sits. So we do have our air filter cover here, and we need to put that on. So looking at the instructions, it looks like it goes this way. So with that hole at the top, so that's the way I put it on. And then we have a little knob that goes on. That's to screw on the cover, I guess. We'll go ahead and cement that up and put that on. But as I look at this, after we've get it, the knob put on it, it doesn't look right. It's crooked, it's offset, and it shouldn't be. So I think I've got it clocked wrong. Now the instructions are not very clear exactly how this is supposed to be. It looked like the knob needed to go at the top. However, yeah, we're going to pry it back up because that really weird angle that we got going on there, I don't think that's too good. So we're going to rotate it here counterclockwise a little bit, and then just cement it back into place, and that gives us a much better fit, and it looks right. So that's the thing, if it doesn't look right, that's probably not the way it goes. So for the rest of the canister, it does have a square peg and a square hole here where it sets in place. I don't know why it needs to be square, but it is. You would think if it's round and there's no detail on it, which in this case it doesn't have any detail, it wouldn't matter. But they did make it square. So we're just going to cement that into place there. Now we do have a bracket that holds this into place. And it has a long tab there that's supposed to engage with the airframe. And if we look at it there, you can see it kind of moves back and forth, and it's not really engaging, which means this part's not fitting very well. So we want to close that gap up, and the only way that I see to actually do that, to make everything look like it's supposed to be, is we need to kind of file down these brackets here that holds that air cleaner into place. So we're going to take and fit that, and it does take a couple of times to get it right, but we do want a nice good seat. So with that done, we can go ahead and cement that into place, and we just want to make sure that it is fully engaged there at that tab right there on the edge, because that's the area that's going to be seen the most. So we will go ahead and put that into place there. So the next part we're going to put on is the other side of our airframe here. I'm going to call it an airframe. It's a truss structure. Truss structure. I think I said that right. So we're just going to start here towards our tail rotor. Kind of get these pieces lined up there. And then we're going to move down across the bottom of it there, one little section at a time. And I do this also on full fuselage type aircraft there, making sure that we got everything lined up as best we can get it. And if we use our tweezers here, we can align the sides, and we just want to make sure that we've closed up all the gaps. So I am seeing that there is right there where that little flap is. I don't know that it's called a flap, but it doesn't really want to close up. So we're going to add a little bit of, to me, extra thin there and kind of press that together. And then we could just move along the rest of this rail section here and close that up. Yeah, just like that. Just press it together, let it grab a little bit, and then we can come in with our tweezers again and make sure that we've got a good alignment there. Don't want to press too hard because to me, extra thin will soften this polystyrene. And if you squeeze too hard on it, then you can kind of put a little groove in it. And we don't. I know helicopters are groovy, but we don't want our bottom rail here groovy. So just be careful that we don't do that. Now we can always clean this up later with a little sanding stick there. So that's the main sections together, and it looks pretty good. So the next thing we're going to do is put this bottom structure in. Now this is where the engine is going to sit. And as you can see, that large rectangular piece there is actually the bottom, I think, of the oil sump on the actual engine there. So I'm going to lay this down on the mat so that we can get it fairly square. And then we just go ahead and cement that into place. Now we will come back in and get those center cross members cemented into the sides there. So I do want to check the alignment here. You know that I really like to check alignments. So test fitting is a must, especially on this kit. So that looks good. Everything's fitting nicely. We're in good shape. So the next item that we're going to take care of is there's a little crossbar here that it goes from the right side to the left side and just behind our air filter assembly there. And there's not much of a divot for this little brace to set in, and I'm having trouble with it. So it's kind of annoying. So we're going to go back and put some more adhesive on it there, some more to me extra thin, and see if we can't get one end of it to stick. And once we get that to stick, then we can go ahead and align the other end. And the bottom end of it, by the way, does not have a recess to go into, so you just kind of line this thing up, I guess, as best we can. So with that cross brace in place, that's kind of what it's supposed to look like, I think. It's kind of hard to tell with the instructions, but I believe that's where it's supposed to be. So the next item we have here is a battery box. Now this battery box doesn't go into all the versions, but the version that we're building, it does go. It has two little bitty half moon cutouts there off on the left side, right where I'm putting the glue or the cement right now. And then we can double check our alignment because there are no little tabs or anything on the cross braces there that let you know where it goes. It just sits in there and it's supposed to be level. So we want to check and make sure that it's level. I'm pretty sure it's a battery box anyway. I'm sure one of my helicopter guys out there is going to let me know. But yeah, it looks like a battery box to me anyway. So with that all straight, we can start working on this structural lattice that goes across the top of our tail boom. So we do have to kind of squeeze this thing into place there. We've got some little alignment pins there that we need to get set into place. And once we do, we can start to see what the fit's going to be. And we do have some issues here. It doesn't really want to go down towards the tail section there, right there where my thumb is. And we're going to have to modify that so that that'll push down into place there. It's not supposed to be elevated. So I think the best thing to do is to pop this back out. And we need to do some sanding there on those points so that it'll actually slide in and we'll be able to cement it into place there. So with the sanding stick, once we remove it from the rest of the assembly there, I'm going to kind of go at it a little bit aggressively here, but that's not a really aggressive grit sanding stick there. we're going to sand those edges down. I really want this to set nice and flat in there. So we need to go back and test fit it again and see how it fits. And of course, this kit it's full of having to do some test fitting because, well, I've mentioned it before, but Italeri doesn't necessarily do a great job, especially on these older kits. Now, I don't know about the new kits, but on these older kits, we do have to fit these parts. So I've done a lot of sanding on it, and I've decided just to melt it in with the Tamiya Extra Thin, and we're just going to press it down with our tweezers here to make sure that it's flush. So once we get it nice and flush, we can carry on with gluing the rest of it. So we just did the tail end of it there, and we're just going to move on down the rest of the lattice work. And right down the side of those top rails, and make sure that everything is cemented up nice and solid. So right now we're still in sync with our instructions, and we have a hub to put in for our tail rotor. Just a little cap there, and a little touch of Tamiya Extra Thin to make sure that it's nice and secure. So this little part right here, this is the alignment section for the shaft that goes to our tail rotor. And we have to install that. And it's going to have to line up with the actual there's a little cutout for the engine. So where that shaft goes in to our engine assembly. So we're going to want to make sure that that's in, it's perpendicular and it's as close to center alignment there as possible. I did have to trim off the left corner of it there to make sure that it's in alignment. So next up, we have this piece to put in. Where's my helicopter guide? Tell me what this is. Is it an elevator? Maybe. I can't remember. Anyway, it just fits onto a couple of little pins there. So we're going to put some Tamiya Extra Thin there, and we need to double check and make sure that it is aligned. It's kind of like a tail fin on an aircraft, you know. So don't want it crooked. Now on the ends of it, we have these little caps that need to go on to it. So we're just checking to make sure that they fit okay. And we're going to add a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin, although that was a little bit more than a little bit, but we'll be okay. we'll polish that off later after it dries. So we'll stick this side on, and then we'll go ahead and put the opposite side on. And once you get both sides on, you can use your fingers to kind of press these home, you know, so that they're fully seated and we don't have any gaps and the alignment's okay on them. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do here. Cement it on, and then we're just going to press it together to make sure that everything is lined up. Just like so. All right, so we are out of sequence now from our instructions. This is the shaft, the actual drive shaft that goes to our tail rotor. And if I can get it set back into place here. I want to put this in now because all those little caps that goes along all of those little cross members all the way down, they need to be painted the same color as the rest of the airframe. So we're going to cement this into place, and I don't think it's going to be an issue for us, even though we are out of sequence, but it's going to make it easier for us for painting. So we're just going to move right down the spine there and cement each one of those into place. Each one of them have a little pad that they need to sit on, and we just need to make sure that that's all lined up for us. And we'll just cement that all the way back towards the tail rotor there. So here's my thinking. Our engine is already painted up, but we need to be able to insert our engine after everything is painted on the on this tail structure here. So I'm just checking to make sure that yes, we can get the engine into place, and that drive shaft that goes all the way back to the tail rotor lines up into that slot on our engine. And so that's a good fit. So we look good there. So now we can move on. So okay, back to our instructions. Now we've already done all that right there in step 7. So we need to look at, yeah, we installed that drive shaft already. So that was a skip forward there in step 7. But in step 6, we do have a little truss assembly there that goes above the engine. We're going to have to build that up, and we're going to have to also build up the intake for our engine. So we will go ahead and put this truss assembly together first. And it's a little fiddly. I mean, it doesn't really, it has no locator pins, but it's pretty obvious how it goes together here. So we just need to hold it in place and put a little bit semi-extra thin on it. And once that grabs a little bit, then we can go ahead and just cement up the rest of it there. So once we get that little truss assembly assembled there, it's got this hole. And now it's starting to make sense to me when it comes to the engine. So let's just see how this fits. It needs to go in. So I think we're going to do a test fit here. And it needs, yeah, that drive shaft needs to go through that little triangular hole there. And then that little hole on the front is for the engine. That's where that pulley's supposed to go. And if you remember from our first video when we built up the engine, we made that little piece right there. That hole is supposed to hold that pulley, and we put that little piece in there, but we didn't glue it. So we can go ahead and remove that. I wasn't sure how it was supposed to go, but it didn't look right to me, so I made that little piece, and that was a wasted effort. So we're just going to pull that out. We didn't glue this into place. It's just stuck there. So we'll take that off. We don't need it. And let's go back and check our fit again. So we'll slide the engine into place. And we got to lift up that drive shaft that goes to our tail rotor there and slide that truss in. And we need to check this fit to make sure everything's going to go right. So our pulley actually sits in that little bitty hole right there. If I can get it in there. There we go. And it doesn't really fit. And by that I mean where the truss is setting on those forward there's these little tabs that stick up there, and it won't let our engine go all the way back like it's supposed to. So that's kind of an issue, because when I get the engine back, it just doesn't line up. So there's something we need to do here. All right, these little tabs that stick up here on our airframe, they're causing an issue that doesn't allow the engine to go back and set right on that bottom plate where it's supposed to. See, once I tip it back, it doesn't sit down. All right, we're going to have to make some modifications here. So let's go ahead and do those modifications, I guess. I think we need to cut these off. I don't really think we need them. So let's look at some pictures here. So this is and I got these pictures off off the internet, of course. You can see the truss there, and there's not really a part sticking up. Well, I'm kind of out of frame there, but if you look down, it's kind of there, but it's behind the rest of that connection section there on the main frame. So if we look at this photograph here, this is more like where the truss and engine mount would sit. So let's just cut these off. I know, that's kind of a hillbilly way to do things. But they're keeping our engine and everything from lining up correctly. So we're going to snap those off. And I don't know, maybe Italeri just used photographs and they saw something there and they thought it needed to be molded in. But I don't think we need them. So we're going to take them off, because we really need this to fit correctly, because if it doesn't, then our engine's not going to fit correctly, and that's like a total issue. So we don't like issues, so we're just going to eliminate those little tabs there, and we're going to test fit our engine again, and yeah, we can get everything to set exactly like it's supposed to. And now our engine mates up to that bottom plate that's on the bottom structure. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to go with. Yeah, we're doing that. So since I snapped those off, we need to clean that up a little bit there and kind of round that off. So I don't know why those tabs were there to begin with. I guess from a side profile, it looks like that's supposed to be there, but I really don't think it is. So we're not going to worry about it. I mean, we can always add something in that fits later. So we need to go back and recheck this fit once again to make sure that everything is good to go before we move on. We don't want to be later on in the build, after we get all the paint on and all that, and find out that we actually really need that. So I think that this is the right way to go. I don't know why they put those on there, because if this little truss brace is to fit correctly, they can't be there. That's all there is to it. Now, I guess we could have sanded those the corners of those trusses down, but then there wouldn't have been anything to hold them together. So that would have been another structural problem that we would have had there. So we kind of got that solved, and we don't need these little bits. I think we're just going to put those in the round file. All right, so we're going to move on to our runners. And yes, we are skipping ahead. And now there are these little locators that are on the cross pieces here for our runners or skids. And we're just going to check it to see exactly where they're supposed to sit. And it looks like everything sits to the outside of those little locator tabs that are on those cross pieces for our runners or skids. And it fits nicely, so I'm going to go ahead and cement these on. Yes, this is a step that comes later on, but we kind of need this in place if we're going to check our balance. And that's kind of important here, right? We need to know whether or not we need to add weight up forward on our aircraft to make sure that it's not a tail sitter. So I'm going to cement these together. So once we give those skids a little bit of time to set up, we're going to go ahead and dry fit our cockpit area right to the airframe there. So it's 4 little pins there that line up. Well, I think they line up. Yeah, okay. So we're in good shape there. And we need to go ahead and put some weight up front. So I'm going to set the seat into place somehow. Let's see. We'll put the floor in first, tilt the seat in, and get everything pushed in right where it's supposed to sit. What this does is it adds that weight back up forward like we really need it. And once we do that, we can check our airframe and see if we have any balance here, which we do, which is a great relief. So we're not going to need to add any extra weight underneath those seats there to get the helicopter to sit down, because the majority of our parts that goes on next is going to be the engine and the main rotor and the fuel tanks and all that. And of course we still have our clear canopy or windscreen to go on, and the doors, and then of course our center console with all of our gauges. So that's going to add more weight up front. So we're in good shape. So let's go back to that cockpit section there. We need to put some parts on it, and also the air intake, and then our fuel tanks. We can work on those, and the antennas as well. So we can go ahead and put all that together. Now you do need to really note which version that you're building, because not all these parts go on every single aircraft. So once we figure all that out, we will go back here to the cockpit section, and I don't know if this is a speaker or what it is, but we're going to put it on. And it just has a really light outline for a locator there. So we need to make sure that that's center. And then we can put our searchlight or landing light on. It's got a little bitty locator hole. I'm having trouble talking. Oh, there we go. So we just need to align that up. And it kind of looks like there's a piece missing off of it, but we'll get to that. So next up, we need to fit our fuel tanks. And these are really, really hard to get into place, but they don't set correctly, and it doesn't look like our reference photos at all because the mounts have the wrong angle on them. So I'm just going to check that angle and see how much material we need to remove, because we actually need to adjust that. Otherwise, they're not going to sit and look like they're supposed to on our helicopter. So that's kind of the angle that these tanks sit at. So we're going to go ahead and grab a file and get to work on this. I know there's a lot of cleanup on this thing, but you know, I'm pretty sure it's going to build up nicely. I mean, it already looks really good. So once we get that set and we've checked all that out, we can go ahead and glue up our fuel tanks. So we do have a couple of top halves to put on. A little bit of Tamiya extra thin, and let it run down into that little groove right there. And it looks like these fuel cells set in some sort of a pan. And that's the way it's really supposed to look. So that's okay. That's a good detail. And we can go ahead and set these into place. And I don't think there's any reason why we can't glue these or cement these into place now. So that's what I'm going to do. It might be a little tight later on, but I think we're going to be okay. So we're going to go ahead and cement these up. So next up, we have a little antenna fin that needs to go on. Now, not every version has this, so whichever version that you have decided to build, make sure that your particular helicopter has this little antenna in place. So now we need to go ahead and build up this intake tube here for our engine. It's got this nice little funnel that needs to go on, and we'll cement that up. And you want to double check and make sure that it is aligned correctly. It just kind of looks like a funnel on the end. And then there is a screen that goes on to the very end of it. And I just want to make sure that those cross hatches for our screen look right. and they're aligned correctly. And we'll just cement that into place. Now we're going to paint this separately, so we'll set that aside. So this particular version that we're building, it does have this secondary antenna. So we're going to go ahead and put that into place. And you just have to look at the instructions and decide which cross member it goes on and cement it in. And then it does have the opposite side that you cement on to the end. That they left this one end off so that you could actually stick it into place there. So now we have to attach that, and we just want to make sure that that's lined up, because they're supposed to be left to right. It's supposed to look the same. So we're going to do our best there. So we've already put our skids on, and depending upon which version you're using, not every single one of them have the auxiliary wheels. So on this particular one, I'm going to leave that off. Then we have our guns to build up, but they have to be painted separately. So we're going to leave that alone, and we're going to move on to step 9. What is that? F. And yeah, so 9F is our rotor. So we need to put our counterweights into place first, and it does have a square section on the main shaft. And we'll just slide that down over top of it and cement it into place. And then we've got the central hub for our main rotor, and it's just a pin and hole, and it is kind of loose, so we need to be careful of our alignment there. So we can just go ahead and put some cement there, put the hub on, and since it is kind of loose, I do want to kind of press this down into place. We really want to make sure that that's got a nice tight contact there, and also that it's straight with the main rotor. And we'll go ahead and attach our other rotor. Same thing, pin and hole alignment there. And I just want it to grab a bit for us. And I'm going to press it into place there. And we're going to check our alignment too. As you can see, it can wiggle a little bit, and we don't want them crooked. Okay, let's zoom in a bit. So on top of our rotor hub here, we've got a couple of little bitty pins that we need to put into place. And they got those small holes there. And as you can see, these are little bitty pieces. You need to be careful that they don't slip out of your tweezers and you lose them. And we'll put both those on. And it's important that we give these plenty of time to set up before we start handling this. So you want to check the alignment there, and yeah, not quite straight, and give it a little tug there, and we're in good shape. That looks nice. Okay, so we got our cockpit area built up there, and of course we don't have the seat attached because it's going to be painted a different color, and we don't have to worry about that added weight that I was worried about that we could stick in underneath the cushions of the seat there to keep it from tail sitting. But it's good. It's got really good weight distribution, so we don't have to worry about that. And we got all of our airframe built up. Now we haven't glued on our cockpit area yet because we still got to insert the engine. And since we already got the engine painted, it would be a bad idea to put it in now. So we got all that done. And we also built up our main rotor shaft here and our main rotor as well. So that's all ready to be painted. And then of course we still have all these little parts that we're gonna be painting those separately. You know, the things like the machine guns and the ammo boxes and our the center pedestal type console with all of our gauges and stuff on it for inside the cockpit. We're going to do that separate. So yeah, so I guess the only thing left to do is do a little prep for painting. We're going to need to fill some things to get it to look good, because we do have some areas there, especially on that top lattice work there, where them pins were, you know, that actually needs just a little bit of filler, but we'll take care of that. It won't take long to do. And then we're going to shoot some paint. I think we'll wrap it up next video. I hope. So, special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I make these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And also, if you are new to the channel and I've earned your subscription, I would appreciate it if you go ahead and subscribe. So, until I see you guys next Friday, you guys stay safe.